Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's good to be with you today on this Monday morning. Hope you've had a great weekend. We're in the book of Mark, and we are continuing in the study of how Mark viewed Jesus, the incidences in Jesus' life, beginning with John the Baptist introducing Jesus, Jesus being led into the wilderness to be tempted after his baptism, Jesus coming out from passing all the tests of his temptation into his ministry. Now, if you did the things that Jesus did, it's not going to take long before you draw the crowd. Jesus was healing people. He was confronting the Pharisees on their dead religion. And the people were sucking this stuff in. They just loved Jesus. And Jesus is in the beginning of his real popularity phase. We know it didn't last all that long. He went from popularity to persecution. But while he was in his popularity phase, crowds began to follow Jesus. But Jesus paid specific attention to the calling of a group of men. He called them his disciples. These were the ones who stood with Jesus, who walked with Jesus, and he invested in these 12 incredible men. Now, one of the men that he calls in our reading today in Mark chapter 2 is a man called Matthew from the tribe of Levi. And I'll just read to you the short version of what took place here. Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi, that is Matthew, got up and followed him. Now, Levi is a good Jewish name. He would have been regarded as one of the priestly tribes, or having a connection to the tribe of Levi. And his name was Matthew, in other words. But Jesus called Matthew. Now, the interesting thing was that Matthew was a tax collector. A tax collector was one considered by Jewish people to be a sellout, because he took money from Jewish people to give to the Roman governor, and he kept a whole bunch of that money as a profit for himself. And the Jewish people hated the tax collectors because they were paying a tax that they believed was illegitimate. And here's Jesus walking down the street, and he sees a tax collector. And as he begins to walk up to the tax collector, I bet the other disciples, who only had a few at that stage, would have said, so Jesus, where are you going? And Jesus said, "No, I'm just looking at that guy over there. Levi is his name, Matthew. I think he'd make an awesome disciple. What do you think?" And the men were in absolute horror. They said, "Jesus, you wouldn't really do that, would you? Listen, we're from the conservative party here, and you want to call somebody who's a seller to the Romans, someone who's a tax collector, someone who's taken money from us we believe illegitimately, and you want to make him a disciple?" And Jesus would have smiled and said, "Yep, I want to make him a disciple." You see, the disciples were learning a lesson from Jesus about the value of a human being. Remember, we said that he valued a leper, the untouchable one, and Jesus valued that leper so much he reached out and he touched him. We read how Jesus valued dying, sick, paralytic people. He reached out to them, he touched them, he held them, he led them, he held their hands, and he healed them. And now Jesus stretches it even more to extend his love, his grace, and his call to a tax collector. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall and listen to some of the conversations between the disciples and Levi over the course of the next few days. I bet Peter gave him a hard time. I bet Peter gave him the cold shoulder and said, "Who do you think you are, breaking into our little team? This is our Jesus." But Levi stuck with it, and as a result, he ends up writing the first gospel of our New Testament, the book of Matthew. A good Jewish man, but way off beam as a tax collector. Are you getting a picture, people, of Jesus' love for people? Not just nice people, not just good people, but people who have been rejected, and people who the rest of the world has said, "We don't want to have anything to do with you." Jesus' call to mankind is very unique. You know, if I were Jesus and I was to be called to say, "Right, I need you to choose 12 people that are going to change the world," you know who I would have called? I would have called a whole bunch of celebrities, some great sportsmen, some very sophisticated, strategic thinking people, some people who could add value financially. Those are the people that I would have called if I were tasked to change the world and I could only choose 12 people. But look at the people Jesus chose. A bunch of fishermen, a bunch of other people as well, and above all, a tax collector. God's love for people is universal, people. His call on your life, no matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, no matter what people say about you. Because I know what people say about people. They talk about us all the time. It's not always kind, is it? And yet Jesus looks at us and he says, man, I love you so much. I have a plan for your life. I want you to join my team. Now, the interesting thing, I remember as a kid, when we would choose our teams to play games, everybody would line up and they'd nominate two captains. The captain would say, I want you. And the other guy would say, I want you. And the other guy would say, and they went through. Can you imagine being, I remember being the last chosen. Do you remember the feeling of being the last to be selected, to be chosen for the kids' football team? Man, how hurtful that was. Well, Jesus doesn't choose celebrities necessarily. He loves celebrities. He doesn't choose wealthy necessarily, although he loves the wealthy and has a plan for them. He chooses everybody. And anybody is available who is available for the call of God. The call is there for you. So you don't ever have to feel disappointed that Jesus hasn't chosen you as I would have felt when I wasn't chosen for the team. Get a picture today. God has a place in his team for you. The team's purpose and the team's goal is to save the world for the kingdom of God. You have a place, people, in that team. Man, I love that thought. Think about that today. Bye, guys.